Don't be dramatic, she scolded herself. But now John was speaking. He had a way of commanding attention with his voice, probably because he spoke less often than everyone else. He spent most of his time listening, but not out of reticence. He was gathering information, speaking only when he had wisdom or sarcasm to dispense. Often it was both at once. Does anyone know what's happening tomorrow? They were all silent for a moment, and the waitress took the opportunity to come over for their order. Charlie flipped quickly through the menu, her eyes not really focusing on the words. Her turn to order came much faster than she was unexpecting, and she froze. Eggs, she said at last. The woman's hard expression was still fixed on her, and she realized she had not finished. Scrambled wheat toast, she added. And the woman went away. Charlie looked back down at the menu. She hated this about herself. When she was caught off guard, she seemed to lose all ability to act or process what was going on around her. People were incomprehensible, their demands alien. Ordering dinner shouldn't be hard, she thought. The others had begun their conversation again, and she turned her attention to them, feeling like she had fallen behind. What do we even say to his parents? Jessica was saying. Carlton, do you ever see them? Charlie asked. Not really, he said. Around, I guess, sometimes. I'm surprised they stayed in Hurricane, Jessica said with a note of worldly disapproval in her voice. Charlie said nothing, but she thought, how could they not? His body was never found. How could they not have been secretly hoped he might come home? No matter how impossible they knew it was, how could they leave the only home Michael knew? It would mean really, finally giving up on him. Maybe that was what this scholarship was, an admission that he was never coming home. Charlie was actually aware that they were in a public place. Where talking about Michael felt inappropriate. They were in a sense both insiders and outsiders. They had been closer to Michael, probably more than anyone in this restaurant. But with the exception of Carlton, they were no longer from Hurricane. They did not belong. She saw the tears falling on her paper placemat before she felt them, and she hurriedly wiped her eyes, looking down and hoping no one had noticed. When she looked up, John appeared to be studying his silverware, but she knew he had seen. She was grateful to him for not trying to offer comfort. John, do you still write? Charlie asked. John had declared himself an author when they were about 6, having learned to read and write when he was 4, a year ahead of the rest of them. At the age of 7, he completed his first novel and pressed his poorly spelled, inscrutably illustrated creation on his friends and family. Demanding reviews, Charlie remembered that she had given him only 2 stars. John laughed at the question. I actually do my E's the right way these days, he said. I can't believe you remember that, but I do actually, yeah. He stopped, clearly wanting to say more. What do you write? Carlton obliged. And John looked down at his placemat, speaking mostly to the table. Short stories mostly. I actually had one published last year. I mean, it was just in a magazine, nothing big. They all made suitable noises of being impressed, and he looked up again, embarrassed but pleased. What was the story about? Charlie asked. John hesitated, but before he could speak or decide not to, the waitress returned with their food. They had all ordered from the breakfast menu, coffee, eggs, and bacon. Blueberry pancakes for Carlton. The brightly coloured food looked hopeful, like a fresh start of the day. Charlie took a bite of her toast, and they all ate silently for a moment. Hey, Carlton, John said sullenly. Whatever happened to Freddy's anyway? There was a brief hush. Carlton looked nervously at Charlie, and Jessica stared up at the ceiling. John flushed red, and Charlie spoke hastily. It's okay, Carlton. I'd like to know too. Carlton shrugged, stabbing his pancakes nervously with his fork. They built over it, he said. What did they build? Jessica asked. Is there something else there now? Was it built over or just torn down? John asked. Carlton shrugged again, quick like a nervous tick. Like I said, I don't know, it's too far back from the road to see, and I haven't exactly investigated. It might have been leased to someone, but I don't know what they did. It's all been blocked off for years, under construction. You can't even tell if the building is still there. So it could still be there? Jessica asked with a spark of excitement breaking through. Like I said, I don't know, Carlton answered. Charlie felt the diner's fluorescent lights glaring down on her face, suddenly too bright. She felt exposed. She had barely eaten, but she found herself rising from the booth, pulling a few crumbled bills from her pocket and dropping them on the table. I'm going to go outside for a minute, she said. Smoke break, she added hastily. You don't smoke, she chided herself. For the clumsy lie, she made her way to the door, jostling past a family of four without saying excuse me, and stepped out into the cool evening. She walked to the car and sat on the hood, the metal denting slightly under her weight. She took in breaths of the cool air as if it were water and closed her eyes. You knew it would come up. You knew you would have to talk about it. She reminded herself. She had practiced on the drive here, had forced herself to think back to happy memories, to smile and say, remember when? She thought she was prepared for this, but of course she had been wrong. Why else would she have to run out of the restaurant like a child? Charlie? She opened her eyes and saw John standing next to the car, holding her jacket out in front of him like an offering. You forgot your jacket, he said, and she made herself smile at him. Thanks, she said. She took it and draped it over her shoulders, then slid over on the car's hood for him to sit. Sorry about that, she said. In the dim lights of the parking lot, she could still see him blush to the ears. He joined her on the car's hood, leaving a deliberate space between them. I haven't learned to think before I talk. I'm sorry, John watched the sky as the plane passed overhead. Charlie smiled, this time unforced. It's okay. I knew it was going to come up. I had to. It sounds stupid, but I never think about it. I don't let myself. No one knows what happened except my aunt, and we never talk about it. Then I come here, and suddenly it's everywhere. I was just surprised, that's all. Uh-oh, John pointed, and Charlie saw Jessica and Carlton hesitating in the doorway of the diner. She waved them over, and they came. Remember that time at Freddy's when the merry-go-round got stuck and Marla and that mean kid Billy had to keep riding it until their parents plucked them off? Charlie said. John laughed, and the sound made her smile. Their faces were bright red, crying like babies. She covered her face, guilty that it was funny to her. There was a brief, surprised silence, and Carlton started laughing. Then Marla puked all over him. Sweet justice, Charlie said. Actually, I think it was nachos, John added. Jessica wrinkled her nose. So gross. I never rode it again, not after that. Oh, come on, Jessica, they cleaned it, said Carlton. I'm pretty sure kids puked all over that place. Those wet floor signs weren't there for nothing. Right, Charlie? Don't look at me, she said. I never puked. We used to spend so much time there. Privileges of knowing the owner's daughter, Jessica said, looking at Charlie with mock accusation. I couldn't help who my dad was, Charlie said, laughing. Jessica looked thoughtful for a moment before she continued. I mean, how could you have a better childhood than spending all day at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? I don't know, said Carlton. I think that music got to me over the years. He hummed a few bars of the familiar song. Charlie dipped her head to it, recalling the tune. I love those animals so much, Jessica said suddenly. What's the proper term for them? Animals, robots, mascots? I think those are all accurate. Charlie leaned back. But anyway, I used to go and talk to the bunny, and what was his name? Bonnie, Charlie said. Yeah, said Jessica. I used to complain to him about my parents. I always thought he had an understanding look about him. Carlton laughed. Animatronic therapy. Recommended by 6 out of 7 crazy people. Shut up, Jessica reported. I knew he wasn't real, I just liked talking to him. Charlie smiled a little. I remember that, she said. Jessica, in her prim little dresses, her brown hair in two tight braids, like a little kid out of an old book. Walking up to the stage when the show was over, whispering earnestly to the life-size animatronic robot. If anyone came up beside her, she went instantly silent and still waiting for them to go away so she could resume her one-sided conversation. Charlie had never talked to the animals at her father's restaurant, or felt close to them like some kids seem to. Although she liked them. They were belonged to the public. She had her own toys, mechanical friends waiting for her at home. That belonged only to her. I liked Freddy's, said John. He always seemed the most relatable. You know, there are a lot of things about my childhood that I can't remember at all, Carlton said, but I swear I can close my eyes and see every last detail of that place. Even the gum I used to stick under the tables. Gum? Yeah, right, those were buggers. Jessica took a tiny step away from Carlton. He grinned. I was 7, what do you want? You all picked on me back then. Remember when Marla wrote Carlton smells like feet on the wall outside? You did smell like feet, Jessica laughed with a sudden outburst. Carlton shrugged, unperturbed. I used to try to hide when it was time to go home. I wanted to be stuck in there overnight so I could have the whole place to myself. Yeah, you always kept everyone waiting, said John. And you always hid under the same table. Charlie spoke slowly. When she did, everyone turned to her as though they had been waiting. Sometimes I feel like I remember every inch of it, like Carlton, she said, but sometimes it's like I hardly remember it at all. It's all in pieces. Like I remember the carousel, and that time it got stuck. I remember drawing on the placemats. I remember little things, eating that greasy pizza, hugging Freddy in the summer, and his yellow fur getting stuck all over my clothes. But a lot of it is like pictures, like it happened somewhere else. They were all looking at her oddly. Freddy was brown, right? Jessica looked to the others for confirmation. I guess you really don't remember it that well after all. Carlton teased Charlie, and she laughed briefly. Right, I meant brown, she said. Brown. Freddy was brown. Of course he was. She could see him in her mind now, but somewhere in the depths of her recall there was a flash of something else. Carlton laughed into another story, and Charlie tried to turn her attention to him, but there was something disturbing, worrisome about that lapse of memory. It was 10 years ago. It's not like you've got dementia at 17, she told herself, but was such a basic detail to have misremembered. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught John looking at her, a pensive expression on his face, as though she had said something important. You really don't remember what happened to it? She asked. Carlton with more urgency in her voice than she intended. He stopped talking, surprised. Sorry, she said. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's okay, he said. But yeah or no. I really don't remember what happened. How can you not know? You live here. Charlie, come on, said John. It's not like I hang around that part of town. Things are different. The town has grown, Carlton said, mildly seeming unruffled by her outburst. And I honestly don't look for reasons to go around there, you know? Why won't I? There isn't any reason. Not anymore. We could go there, John said suddenly, and Charlie's heart skipped. Carlton looked nervously at Charlie. What? Seriously, it's a mess. I don't know if you can even get to it. Charlie found herself nodding. She felt as though she had spent the whole day weighed down by memory, seeing everything through a filter of years, and now she felt suddenly alert. Her mind fully present, she wanted to go. Let's do it, she said. Even if there's nothing there I want to see. They were all silent, only John smiled, with her reckless confidence. Yeah, let's do it.